I want to bring in someone right now. I'm going to get shit for bringing her on, but she's one of my dear personal friends, and I don't care. And I'm going to tell her that when she comes on.
Yeah,
we're just going to sit here for a minute. And those of you that are listening, you'll have to bear with us because this is for the visual medium. We're streaming right now. I'm going to sit watch the viewer numbers go because Karlyn, she brings the hate. But I love her. Karlyn, how are you? Karlyn Borysenko, the good doctor.
I'm great, Eric. And you know, the viewers that are leaving, they really should stick around because I'm going to tell you the crazy story of how 2 weekends ago I went to a socialist reproductive justice conference and I went on a self-managed abortion tour where I got introduced to the idea of an abortion doula and saw a real-life abortion shrine. So if they want to leave and go run away from what the socialists are doing to the country and learn about all of the pro-abortion death cult stuff that I've seen in the last 2 weeks, they're welcome to do it. I just think that'd be a little ill-considered.
I do too. I think you need to stay, you need to listen, you need to have an open mind, because I think one of the things we're seeing, and we'll touch on this shortly, I don't like to get too much into personal issues because I think we as conservatives get so distracted, and we're referencing the whole Steven Crowder thing, and you commented on that too, Karlyn. I think we see eye to eye on that, is that our country, and Bob and I were talking about coming on the show here before you brought on, is that what liberalism is doing is not merely stylistic. It's not. We're not talking about tax rates anymore. We're not talking about public assistance or geopolitical relationships. Now we're talking about eroding things that made us what we are: God, country, family, irrespective of what faith that is, irrespective of how your family is made up, but one country, one allegiance to one flag. So and now let me try to parse it out a little bit. Socialist abortion. How did they phrase it?
So what I did is I went to a reproductive justice conference at Hampshire College that was run by legitimate socialists. I'm talking about the former interim president of Hampshire College, which is in Western Massachusetts, literally denouncing capitalism in the keynote on the main stage in the morning. So these are Marxists. It's no joke. And one of the things that they did was they actually they took over the faculty lounge at Hampshire College to create a tour to teach women how to have their own self-managed abortion. And they even had like a disclaimer up front saying, this isn't legal to do in this state, so we're not telling you how to have a self-managed abortion because that would be illegal. But if you wanted to have a self-managed abortion, here's how you do it. And they took you through the entire process. They advised you on how to make a self-managed abortion gift basket to give to your friends having a self-managed abortion. They talked to you about an abortion doula, which is a woman that sits on a stool next to you while you're bleeding out the child on the toilet. And then, and I swear to God, I have pictures of this on my Substack, karlyn.substack.com. They literally made a shrine that after you have your self-managed abortion, you go and worship yourself at the shrine, because the shrine was about worshiping the act you just committed as an act of love and an act of revolution. And that was the great culmination of the self-managed abortion. This is real. And, everything that you just said about them trying to eliminate the biological family, for the past 7 months, I have been doing deep dives into the real socialists. We're not talking about AOC. We're not talking about Bernie Sanders. But what we are talking about, and what I've discovered, is that if you go back just a couple of years in the lands and the communities of the real socialists in America, what they were saying 2 years ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago, has become the talking points of the Democratic Party today. So they are winning, and it is real. And there is something that I cover rather extensively on my channel. We actually just did it last week for Socialism Saturday, is this concept of abolish the biological family. This is a concept that is actually being peddled around at Ivy League universities right now by these socialist activists. There was 4 months ago, a woman named Sophie Lewis spoke at the University of Pennsylvania, gave a 2-hour-long lecture on why we should abolish the biological family. So if people think that Steven Crowder is the most important thing that we have to focus on, or people think that me pointing out the obvious and true faults of the conservative movement is something that they want to whine and complain about, I mean, I guess that's a strategy, but the fact is that the far left is actually, leading the way in the country right now, and most people don't even know what they're saying, and it is terrifying when you actually get into it.
Now, that's interesting you say that. I want to segue briefly before we talk about reproductive justice, whatever the hell that means. Sounds terrifying. And when you talk about, Bob is our resident religious scholar. you're talking about idolatry, Bob. Is
Yes.
when you worship this shrine, give this some kind of deification to
it's demonic.
To
demonic. You worship anything other than Jesus Christ, you're wrong. And if you're worshiping yourself, that's demonic. You're going to hell forever.
Well, it's it's narcissism at its worst, which I think really, Karlyn, is at the basis of all this socialism and everything we're seeing. I think social media, I guess just like with any technology, we went from the horse and buggy to the vehicle. We can get places faster. We also have car accidents and DUIs. So I think we're seeing sort of the downside to this medium that we have where we can communicate with each other. But now the more extreme you can get and putting yourself on display, and we've become a country that really embraces that. The transgenderism thing has reached a boiling point, I think, where people are just sick and tired of it. We're like, look, we tolerated it long enough when you wanted equal rights, but now you want to shove it down our throats. Now you want to tell my kids that there's no such thing as gender. Now you want to say that a 200-pound high school senior one day wakes up and says, oh, I kind of suck at track on the boys team. I'm going to go run against some girls and can put on a wig and self-identify. And I think we've gotten to this point. You talk about the failures of the conservative movement. I think we've gotten to this point by taking the high road, sitting on the sidelines going, well, shit, I better not say anything mean or they're going to say bad things about me. I think that's exactly how we've gotten here.
Well, and I can understand that perspective. What I will say, though, is I think a lot of the stuff going on in the conservative movement and I'm going to get in trouble for this just to warn everyone. I think a lot of the outrage around the trans stuff and the drag queens are, quite frankly, it's misguided and it's misplaced. Now, I'm not saying there aren't real realities to face with what's going on in the schools in terms of there are schools that are transing kids. I follow very closely the school district in Burlington, Vermont. I think that Burlington, Vermont is going to be the first city in America entirely built on equity. In Burlington, Vermont, 44% of the students in Burlington, Vermont schools identify as either LGBTQIA+ or gender nonconforming. 44%. And that's because they're integrating it into the curriculum from the time these kids are 4 years old. However, so that's real. That's a real problem. How they're integrating it into school policy. There are over 6,000 schools across the country where it is against school policy to tell parents what gender the students are identifying as at school. So your little darlings could be going off to school identifying by a completely different name, completely different gender, and it is actually written into the school handbook that they cannot tell you that. These are real problems. The mistake that I think that conservatives are making is they're spending all their time complaining about Dylan Mulvaney. And like Dylan Mulvaney, I understand that he, she, whatever pronouns you want to use. I tend to use she because I think that we should be respectful. But like Dylan Mulvaney has a lot of money. Dylan Mulvaney has a lot of followers, but Dylan Mulvaney is not important. I need people to hear that. He, she, what have you, is not important in the grand scheme of what we're talking about. What is important are the policies going on in your kids' schools. And I'm sorry, the Marxist conferences that are hosted at these colleges, where anything that happens in the colleges is going to slowly trickle down into the public schools over time. We've already seen that with critical race theory going from, it's just taught in law schools, to all of a sudden it's being taught to kindergarteners in Arizona because they start to become racist when they're 3 years old. So anything that's happening in the colleges is going to hit your kids in public school at some point. That's what we need to be paying attention to, not nonsense.
Karlyn hit the nail on the head, Bob. We've talked about that so many times. We started hearing about all this craziness, all these crazy social issues, probably about 8-9 years ago, and it was always referred to as campus craziness. Look what they're teaching at these schools. We saw protests on campus, students shrieking and screaming and demanding their safe spaces, and we all thought, they're just in college. Wait till they get out. No, they brought that into the world, and not only did they bring that into the world, but corporate America has embraced it. We're seeing banks literally failing because they've endorsed and embraced these diversity, equity, inclusion measures where they're loaning money. Well, you got a climate change think tank? Here's $100 million. You have no way to pay it back? Well, shit, it looks good on our books. Look how diverse we are. Look how wonderful. We're losing money. So we're seeing it absolutely permeate into corporate America, academia, every aspect, entertainment. And I think one of the big mistakes conservatives have always made is that we don't branch out from politics. There's no viable conservative entertainment. There's no viable conservative university. You have think tanks and things like that, but really we don't have a foothold anywhere outside of, maybe some corner of social media. And the problem is, like, you see there's a Harry Sisson, whatever, those guys on social media, they're very cringy, kind of beta-esque social media influencers that make us all cringe. But we have to remember, and we're all around the same age, our parents didn't understand our generation. Their parents didn't understand their generation. They come home with their bell bottoms and long hair and go, what the hell are you guys doing? We don't understand this generation. And if we sit there and we play Get Off My Lawn, we're going to lose every election from here to eternity. We have to employ the same measures they employ. And I just think we don't know how. And Karlyn, you're exposing, beyond the noise, beyond the distractions, the overarching belief that is going on, that we have to, and this is coming from socialism, Marxism, we have to erode the fabric of what makes America America. And one of those things being the family, education, and even, yes, biological sex, because like I've said before, most of our political divisions in this country since our inception, with the exception of the Civil War and some times where we've been deeply divided, has been stylistic. But substantially, we all want kind of the same thing. I don't think we have a common substance anymore.
No, I would agree with that, Eric. And I would encourage everyone, and I know this is not going to be, what people want to spend their Saturday doing, but I would really encourage everyone to bust out a copy of that Communist Manifesto. Maybe you've had it laying around since college, or download a PDF off the internet. It's a really short read, and you're going to be glad you did, because the Communist Manifesto is providing their playbook. In the Communist Manifesto, they literally talk about abolishing the biological family. And then in the very next paragraph, they say we're going to take over the schools to do it. They have given us their playbook. They gave us their playbook a long time ago. And what I've learned with the socialists is when they tell you something, believe them. They are not good with hiding the quiet part. They say it out loud all the effing time. And let's talk about the trans stuff too, and the gender stuff. So again, I do this stream on my channel called Socialism Saturday. We do it every Saturday at 6 p.m. I really encourage people to come watch it, because I will show you what they're saying. And one of the topics that we touch upon quite a bit in Socialism Saturday is called queer Marxism. And queer Marxism is basically think of it as the trans movement today, the trans activists. These are trans Marxists. And one of the things that they talk about quite frequently is their goal is not to actually uphold biological gender at all. They don't want people to transition from man to woman or woman to man. They want everyone to be non-binary. They have changed the definition of the term trans. So people say, okay, so what are you transitioning from? No, the term trans does not mean transition anymore. It means transform. They are literally saying this in their presentations. And when they say transform gender, what they mean is they want to liberate us from the gender binary, abolish the gender binary. They want to get rid of it entirely and have a world full of non-binary people, or we used to call this androgynous, but they just want to get rid of men and women entirely now. It's not even just about abolishing one, it's about abolishing both. And so I really want people to hear this. This is why when you see people with pronouns like she, they, or they, she, you might think, why are they using they and she? That doesn't make any sense. Because it's a nod to this queer Marxism thing where everyone has to have a foot in the non-binary.
So let me ask you this question. I think a lot of conservatives are wondering, because they don't do the deep dives like you do. I think a lot of people don't want to understand it, but Karlyn's right. And I read the Communist Manifesto in college, and I haven't picked it up in about 20 years. It's probably time to dust off the copy and read it. Same way you would read The Art of War, same way you would read Mein Kampf, same way you would read anything that maybe challenges your orthodoxy, but teaches you at the same time what these people are trying to do. Communist Manifesto is 160 years old, and what is in there is being implemented today. Now, if you erode the family unit, and what else do they do in communist countries? They take away religion, because there is no God higher than the state. You can't worship your family. You can't worship your God. You can only worship government. If you don't have a family, you don't have stability. You have people that are going to be reliant upon the government. If everybody's non-binary, if everybody's trans, if we're pushing abortion the way we are as a form of birth control, you're going to lower the birth rate. You're not going to have people anymore. So, Karlyn, I think what we're all wondering is, in a perfect Marxist state, what does the world look like?
That's a really good question, Eric. And I want to say something about this abortion as birth control, too. It's not even that they see abortion as birth control. They see abortion as a religious sacrament. That is how they're worshiping it. It is beyond. And listen, I'm pro-choice. I've always been pro-choice. I will always be pro-choice. I have limits on that because, reasons, and, we don't have to get into that. But even when I was listening to them talk about abortion, I'm like, this is too much. This is a death cult. And so when we're talking about what does a perfect communist or Marxist world look like, well, you'd want to talk about playing God. Because they want to get rid of the biological family. What that means is that they want all children to be born via surrogacy. This woman that lectured at the University of Pennsylvania actually has written 2 books about this called Full Surrogacy Now and Abolish the Family. And you can look her up on Amazon if you don't believe me. Her name is Sophie Lewis. And so they want all children born via surrogacy. And guess what? There was an article a couple months ago in a medical journal, I kid you not, about how they are experimenting with gestating children in the bodies of brain dead people who have, their brain is not there anymore, but the body is still there. So they're using brain dead people to gestate children as a form of surrogacy. So in the perfect Marxist society, there are no families. There is no biological connection between people. The state will assign you your children based on who they deem worthy of children. By the way, another thing that Sophie Lewis talks about, and we actually just watched a stream where she talked about it last week on my channel, there's a clip of it, is they want to get rid of, basically they want the state to be in charge of every aspect of our lives. So they want the state to assign our housing. They want the state to be in charge of our education, our healthcare, of course. But this goes down to they want to get rid of private kitchens. So if you have a stove and a refrigerator in your home, they don't want you to have that. Why? Because they want you to be getting your food from the communal area, because the state should be providing you all the basic necessities, and that includes food. So why would you even need a kitchen? And guess what that looks like? That looks like these 15-minute cities.
Right. Yep.
Explain for people that don't understand, what is a 15-minute city?
A 15-minute city is basically this thing that they're building. And I don't know that much about it, but I know enough to know that it's a city where you can get everything you need within a 15-minute walk or bike ride or public transportation. So you wouldn't need your own car, and everything's going to be available to you within a 15-minute radius of where you live.
And I think it's things like that. And I think one of the reasons why conservatives tend to, I guess we document the failure, you'll tweet about it, but no one really does anything, is because it really is, when you look along political lines, it's really a city mouse, country mouse dialectic, where the conservatives live in the country and live outside major cities, and major cities are highly liberal. I mean, we know that. You look at any electoral map, where the liberal population centers, those are going to be Los Angeles, San Francisco, and so on and so forth. Whereas you have entire states that are red, that are your rural, and they call them the flyover states. But do you see, and obviously in New Hampshire having tremendous rural areas, do you see this bleeding over into more conservative areas, or is this relegated to cities? Because if it's relegated to cities, then conservatives are going to go, oh, that's cities. That's democratic leadership. Let's get the hell out.
Well, in regards to the 15-minute city stuff, yeah, I mean, but you got to understand, that's the most extreme far left of the far left. What is absolutely bleeding over into conservative areas right now is what's going on in the schools. And I hear this all the time from conservatives. They say, I live in a red area, I don't need to worry about that. No. You are not safe if you live in a rural area. You are not safe if you live in a conservative area, because the problem with the public schools is the teaching pool that has come out of colleges and higher education, colleges of education. And so the same teaching pool that services these progressive cities are also in the teaching pool in rural areas, because those are the ones that are accredited or licensed to teach by the state boards of education. And I promise you, I can go on to, and this is actually scary, because I actually train parents how to go onto their schools' websites and to find out what the schools are teaching. This is called my Schools Exposed program. People can find out more about it at schoolsexposed.com. And you can find all of this with publicly available information, where I actually teach parents how to go on and find their school policy documents, find the professional development training that their teachers are getting, find their diversity and equity staff, find all their plans, because a lot of these school districts have plans for 10 years to integrate equity into the school system. And I can go on to pretty much any school district website in this country and show you exactly how they're teaching your kids critical race theory and gender ideology in the schools right now. You could tell me any school district. I can go in blind. That includes in the state of Florida. I've done it in the state of Florida. I actually was looking into Tampa last week. It's in Tampa. I know it's in my Miami-Dade, something like Broward. That's what it is. Yeah, it's absolutely there. And so this is in every single school district in the country. And I think that a lot of conservatives believe they're safe when they're not.
How do we change that?
This is a hard answer, and this is a hard truth that people need to face. Taking over the school boards is not going to change it. Because unless you live in Vermont and Connecticut, the school board actually has no official power over the curriculum that's being taught in schools. And whatever the teacher wants to teach when they close that door is what's going to be taught. How we change it is that we need a massive revolution in public education in this country. I think the only way out of this is to completely separate government and education. Now, that's going to be a hard thing for people to hear. But if you want to protect your kids, the very best thing you can do is to take them out of the public schools and homeschool them. And I know a lot of people can't do that. That's scary. But I think that that is a reality that we need to start facing up to. And there are a lot of innovations going on in homeschooling in terms of creating these homeschooling pods. So it's not just you, it's a whole bunch of families coming together. And I've talked to kids. I actually met a bunch of homeschool kids in New Hampshire last week, where these are kids who had been to public schools. And I said, these were like 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. And I said, what's the difference between public school and this homeschool pod thing that you're doing? And they all told me, they said, public school is just busy work. It is a complete waste of our time to be there. We're learning so much more this way. And these are engaged, smart, young people. This is the future. This is the only way forward.
And they're not exposed to, the things that you're exposed to. My oldest son is in 6th grade. He's going to be in 7th grade. And I was in 6th and 7th grade in the 94, 95 area. And I remember, I went to public school. I remember getting into 7th grade, and that's where kids started experimenting with drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. So I think if your kids are, especially at that really tender age of, pre-teenhood, that would be a good time to probably get them out, if not earlier, if you can. Now, my kids are in private school, and so far what you're talking about has not reached them yet. But people say private schools and charter schools, those are not immune from what's going on, correct?
No, those are not immune either, because it's the same teaching pool. Now, they can be, if they're a good private school, they can effectively keep that stuff out because they can hire whoever they want as teachers in the private school. But the fact is that private schools can sometimes actually be worse than public schools because you can't push back on the private school. If you as a parent sign your kids up, you probably had to, Eric, I bet this is true for you. You had to sign some sort of paper saying that you would abide by the school policies and all that stuff with the private school. Sure. Well, what happens when you try to push back on you're teaching critical race theory, you're teaching gender ideology? The school can say, we're a private school, we don't want you here anymore, go away. And it's much easier for them to kick you out of private school than it is to do it in public school. So while you actually have more leverage in public school to be able to speak up and fight back, you do have to be careful when it comes to the private and charter schools.
True. I'm happy with the private school experience thus far. And look, effectively, I think, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. We're their customers. So if you have a legitimate gripe, they will get back to you and they'll treat you with respect. But at the same time, Karlyn, you're right, because there's a waiting list a mile long. They're like, okay, if we lose your tuition, we're going to pick it up again in 2 minutes. And that tuition statement, at the top of it is a corporation. It's a corporation. It's a business that's operating. And again, public school that's the go-to for most people, because private school may be financially prohibitive. There might not be a charter school or one worthy around. Homeschool, that's a commitment. And it really, if you have two parents that work, it's very difficult for one parent, to go, oh my God, how am I going to teach my kids stuff that I forgot 30 years ago? But you're right. So they have homeschool communities where these communities come together and say, okay, we're almost going to form our own school. How do those work? And how do they get accredited by the state, or how does that work? So the state can't come in and say, well, hey, you're illegally operating a school.
Yeah, every state has different homeschool laws, so I would encourage everyone to look into the laws of their own state. But I know in New Hampshire, there are whole, businesses that have built up over providing homeschool pods a place to go. So just multiple families come together, and even think about it. If you and 10 of your friends get together and pool your money, especially because school choice is getting more and more popular in state legislators, so you might actually be able to take the money that from the state that you normally would have gotten sent to public schools, take all that money, pool it together, hire a private tutor for your kids. Hire a private tutor, rent out some sort of building that isn't being used for anything else. Have that be your school for your kids. There are a lot of innovative ways that you can do this. And I understand that people are afraid of venturing into something new like this, but I promise you, I keep trying to tell people, like, you know what? The inconvenience of figuring out how to homeschool your children is going to pale in comparison to the inconvenience of that you are going to experience when your little darling at 13 years old comes home and announces that they are trans, and they've probably been transitioned in the school for a while now, because remember, the school doesn't have to tell you when your kids change their gender at school. So this could have been going on for 6 months a year at the school. Your little darling now comes home and tells you, I'm trans, and wants to go on the puberty blockers, and you don't want to put them on the puberty blockers because you don't think they're trans. But then the state, who has already passed a law saying that they can take away your children as starting at the age of 12, which has happened now in California and Washington. They literally have laws that says the school psychologist can recommend that children get taken out of the home starting at age 12 if they don't receive the life-saving care that they get from puberty blockers. So now you're in a position where your kid has been gender transitioned by the school. They want to go on puberty blockers. Your state has a law saying if you don't put them on puberty blockers, they can take them away. I'm sorry, but figuring out how to homeschool your kid is going to be a lot better than that. I know 2 different parents who had their children trans by the schools within a couple of meetings. We're talking within an afternoon club that the parent didn't even know that they were in. And they had to spend months or years undoing that afterwards. So I understand that homeschool is scary. I really do. But it's going to be much better than that situation.
You know, it seems like the perfect marriage of opportunity and the natural progression of childhood, because we all go through that rebellious streak. We all want to do what gains acceptance from our friends, what shocks our parents. That's from the beginning of time. We all did that. The problem is the kids now, they have this idea that being trans or being non-binary is an act of rebellion. It's cool. You get adulation and praise from your peer group. And with social media, that dopamine receptor is fed almost immediately. You can put it on your TikTok and your friends like, yeah, you're stunning and brave. And imagine, Karlyn, imagine, Bob, when you were 12, 13 years old and the peer pressure you felt maybe to smoke or to drink or to do something or dye your hair a funny color, and the praise and the response you got from your friends and you got from your peer group. Now imagine adults encouraging that and pushing it to a level where, hey, we're going to take you and we're going to make you well received and we're going to make you well liked and we're going to give you that adulation, that praise, that indulgence that you're craving, because that's all they're craving is just validation, which we all do. But they are using that. They are exploiting these natural processes of being a kid and going, I want to do what's going to shock my parents. Aha, well, do something irreversible. Do something that's going to change your life. This isn't just dyeing your hair or wearing a T-shirt from a punk rock band or something like that. This is, you are messing with your body, where puberty blockers, you know, whatever it may be. And then the left was like, well, we're not cutting off their genitals. We're not doing this. It's all reversible. Come on. How many people, Karlyn, I'm sure you've spoken to people and know of people who have detransitioned who will tell you horror stories like, oh my God, I can't believe when I was 12 or 13 or 14, something I wanted to do was indulged like that. I think of anything I wanted to do when I was 15. I think of anything I wanted to do when I was 20. If you would have said, this is going to be it for the rest of your life, I would have signed on the dotted line. When I got out of law school, my first job out of law school as a prosecutor, if you would have said, Eric, I will guarantee you a salary of $60,000 for the rest of your career when I was making half that as a prosecutor, I would have signed on the dotted line immediately. Well, yeah, I'm set. Beautiful. So the decisions that we make when we're young, we don't have the wherewithal to appreciate the long-term consequences of that. So I mean, it's terrifying that we've reached a point now. I feel like it's the emperor wears no clothes and everyone's standing around going, it's beautiful. How much longer do we have to indulge this fantasy? I know that you want to respect transgender people, and it's all about respect. I respect, but at what point is like, look, my feelings and your feelings, like something's got to give here. Like my rights and your ability to be free from hurt feelings, like they're not quite meshing with each other. Where do we go from there?
I don't think this is as much about transgender people as it is about parental rights. I think that, listen, I think one of the challenges the conservative movement is running into head on is you now have people in the conservative movement saying that adults shouldn't be allowed to do what they want to do with their own bodies. Well, guess what? The conservative movement just spent 2 years during the pandemic saying my body, my choice. And now you're saying that adults can't do what they want with their own bodies. So that seems contradictory. The more people are attacking trans adults, the more like challenges the movement's going to run into. But you know what is a winning argument? And it's a winning argument with more than just conservatives. It's also a winning argument with suburban liberal moms is parental rights. They are actively trying to attack parental rights in this country. There was a symposium, a day-long symposium at the University of Connecticut Law School month and a half ago that was literally all about attacking parental rights. I think the title of the symposium is parental rights good for children? We're talking about the brightest legal minds in the country coming together to plot how to take away parental rights. There are also 4 different articles in the New York Times, the Washington Post, I think the Spectator, and New York Magazine, and we're talking within the last couple of weeks, all attacking parental rights. That is what they're going after. That is what people need to be paying attention to. Again, it's about the policies in your school district, and it's about them trying to erode parental rights bit by bit. Everything else other than that is a distraction. Dylan Mulvaney is a distraction. Drag Queen Story Hour, I'm sorry, I know it's people's favorite issue. It's a distraction. If you don't want to take your kids to Drag Queen Story Hour, don't take them. I don't think it should be in public schools, but just don't take them. But it's distracting you from the real issues. So parental rights, school policy, that's where the energy needs to go.
Well, I agree with you in part, but I think the drag queens and the Dylan Mulvaney and stuff like that, it's symptomatic of a bigger issue. It's related to the bigger issue. And I think, again, people are probably getting distracted on the sub-issues when there's one big overlying issue.
Well, Eric, I have to push back on that, though, because I do videos quite literally every single day of the week. I write about this stuff all the time on my Substack. I will show you the school policy. I will show you how they're doing this in schools. And those videos get a minute amount of attention to videos that I make about Dylan Mulvaney. So I'm sorry, but all of the attention is going to Dylan Mulvaney and the trans distraction issues. And I'm sorry, if people were commenting on and interacting with the important stuff I was doing, I would be singing a completely different tune. If you really could walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, then I wouldn't have these concerns. But while you are hate watching Dylan Mulvaney for the 57th time this week, your school is transing your child. Can we have some priorities, please?
Well, you hit the nail on the head with hate watching. Hate is a very powerful emotion. Things that we hate. I mean, we're all guilty of it. You'll be on your social media, you see something that you hate, it evokes a response. Like, I got to reply to this right now. Something about Dylan Mulvaney evokes a hateful response in people. And I think it's just, I don't know if I want to conflate hate, because I don't know the guy, but he's definitely obnoxious. Like, to see, like, if you want to be a flamboyant gay guy, go be a flamboyant gay guy, be who you are. But like, to try to like say, okay, I'm now a girl, I'm now a woman, and to say like, I can understand a woman's experience when surely you can't. I think that's where people get emotionally vested. But you're absolutely right. Your issues that you're focusing are the real issues, because that's going to have a direct impact on your child, not whether Dylan Mulvaney gets a $10 million deal from some cosmetic company or whatever. He's doing fine. He claims he's oppressed. He's got more money than all of us combined. He's laughing all the way to the bank, skipping probably all the way to the bank and smiling and giggling. But at the same time, Karlyn, I have to ask you, because you're out there and you come from a liberal background. You come from the world of the Democratic Party. Off of social media, not trying to be woke, not trying to impress their friends, a virtue signal. What are reasonable Democrats saying about this?
I don't know that I know any reasonable Democrats anymore, Eric, if I'm honest about it. They don't really like me that much because I talk about this stuff too much in public. No, I mean, I don't know, but I have to think that I look back to 2021 in Virginia with Glenn Youngkin winning that gubernatorial seat, and the issue that won Glenn Youngkin that gubernatorial seat was critical race theory in the schools. And it was the Republicans hammering on critical race theory in the schools, critical race theory in the schools. The Democrats cannot fight back when Republicans and conservatives are focused on the things that matter to, again, these kind of like Democrat light suburban, liberal, white women who have kids who don't want them learning nonsense and who are actually kind of sensitive to when you talk about taking away their parental rights, when you talk about not teaching their kids basic, math, reading, writing, and math in favor of, teaching them that they're oppressors and oppressed and all this stuff. Like, they understand this. And so I think that if people can just refocus on the issues that matter and not these, okay, social conservatives make up about 30% of the country. And that might not be something that people want to hear, but the fact is, if you are always hammering on social conservative issues, you are going to lose every close election for the rest of your life simply because the numbers are not there. So it's not a matter of you're allowed to care about those things. You're allowed to think about those things are wrong. You're allowed to talk about those things with your friends. But when it comes to actually winning elections and trying to get people to vote for you and trying to move the needle, you have to come more back to the center and focus on the things that we can all agree on, rather than on these outlandish extreme social issues that, like, I'm never going to agree with someone that says that an adult can't do what they want to do with their own body. That's kind of like a hard limit to me. And so if that's where you want to focus, that's fine. I'm not going to vote for you. But if we can come back to the center, and what honestly got me to vote for Donald Trump in 2020 was when he banned critical race theory in the federal government and in all federal government contractors. We can agree on that. Let's focus there.
I'll tell you, I don't think we would be talking about critical race theory. I don't think it would be in the American lexicon, honest to God, without you, Karlyn. I think when you exposed Coca-Cola, you put that issue on the map. Now, whether the mainstream wants to give you credit for it, a lot of other people kind of came around and usurped your thunder, so to speak, but you brought that issue to light. So we're talking about it and made an issue, obviously, because of the work that you've done. Now, before I let you go, there's one thing I've been meaning to ask you. So the reproductive justice, you said there's an abortion doula. Now, I am the proud father of 2 boys. We never had a doula, but for those of you that don't know, a doula is like somebody, like a midwife, I guess you could say, like a nurse practitioner who helps you through the birthing process. Now, what does an abortion doula do? How does that work?
Yeah, so a doula, like you said, is a person. It usually tends to be a woman. I guess it doesn't have to be. And the whole role of a doula is to help a woman have a baby. It's to help her, and to help the family and whatever they need. There are also doulas called the doulas that will help people die well. So if you're and which I actually think is really important. I think death with dignity is something that's really often overlooked. And so I think having a good death and having someone to help you through that process and tend to your needs is a good thing. An abortion doula is actually, someone who commented on my YouTube channel said that she was a doula, and she called the abortion doula the handmaiden of death. And I think that's kind of how I look at it, because the job of an abortion doula is when you're having your self-managed abortion, you basically have to take 2 different types of pills. The first pill that you take, again, in your home apartment, it kills the baby in you. And then the second pill makes you have really bad contractions so that you're forcing the baby out of your body. And I guess you bleed a lot. And I'm told that, it's not just blood, it's also body parts coming out of the body. And basically you spend a lot of time over a couple days, and I don't mean to be graphic, but this is the reality of the situation. You spend a lot of time over a couple days sitting on the toilet, bleeding the baby into the toilet. And the job of the abortion doula is to sit there and to hold your hand and to comfort you and to make you a nice cup of tea, because tea is very important, I was told, on the self-managed abortion tour. And they're supposed to make you abortion playlists. I'm not kidding. This was actually told to me on the tour. And just to be there for you as you're bleeding the baby into the toilet. And then, of course, to help you over to your abortion shrine where you worship yourself following the abortion. This is a real thing. There's actually, if people want to Google it, just Google abortion doula. And what's going to come up is an article from NPR, National Public Radio, talking about how your average abortion doula can make between $200 and $800 per abortion.
There's always money behind it. I mean, I think that's when we talk about, not to harp on the transgender thing, but the gender affirming care. I mean, you see the clinics popping up in the last 15 years. That ain't cheap. They're not doing it as a service. They are charging you a pretty penny. And I imagine that Aetna and United Healthcare don't cover those surgeries. Abortion doula, and then to go worship. So what is the idea behind worshiping? Because every religious dogma, even if it's absent of God, there's some form of sacrament here. What is the ideology behind that? What are you worshiping? Yourself?
When I say you're worshiping yourself, that's literally what I mean. And people again can go on my Substack, which is Karlyn Karlyn.substack.com. You can actually see pictures of the abortion shrine. And one of the things that they had on the abortion shrine is this kind of like wooden carving of a woman with her hands over her eyes. And on the wooden carving, it says, you know, taking care of yourself, like an act of love towards yourself is the greatest revolution. So when I say they're worshiping themselves, I quite literally do mean this is like, because some people have said to me, they're like, Karlyn, are you sure this wasn't a shrine to kind of pray for the soul of the baby, kind of like they do in Japan when they have an abortion? No, that's not what it is. There was nothing indicating a baby in anything that they had on this shrine. In fact, you're not going to believe this. One of the things that they literally had on the abortion shrine was a fertility goddess.
What?
I swear to God.
How does that? So the fertility goddess, who to whom native peoples for thousands of years have prayed throughout various cultures to have a child. What does that have to do with the act of terminating a pregnancy?
Your guess is as good as mine, Eric, but I do find, and again, like I'm very spiritualist in my belief. I have all the crystals on my desk that they had on the abortion shrine, and so I'm feeling a little miffed, to be quite honest, that my faith and my spirituality is being bastardized on the altar of abortion for this death cult. I mean, because that is what it is, and like I said, I am actually pro-life. But pro-choice. I do believe that, we should have the right to choose up to 3 months with exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother. I'm in favor of very sensible compromise. But going on this abortion tour actually made me more pro-life because it was so disgusting and it was so beyond anything that I think should be happening. And this whole idea of celebrating it, and they're wearing t-shirts with the names of the abortion pills and they're shouting their abortions. And it's just like, it's way too much.
It's a death cult.
It is a death cult. I really do believe that. Yeah.
No, but it's all about me. It's all about gratitude and gratification. And look at me. Look how stunning and brave I am. It's all about dopamine addiction. We are just a nation, maybe a world even, of affirmation addicts. Affirm me. If you're strong in your beliefs, you don't need anybody to affirm you. And I think that's one of the big pushbacks, the reason we're seeing pushback to everything going on with everything from the abortion cults to the transgender, is these movements constantly demanding affirmation. You want to believe the way you believe it, but stay true to your beliefs and don't ask me to credit your beliefs in any way. That's where people get upset, is this constant need for affirmation. So that's what we are. Karlyn, you're doing the work. You're talking about the issues that people need to be talking about. You're 100% right. You go places that people just don't want to go. And you say things that people don't want to hear, and maybe that's the reason you get some hate. We've actually had some great numbers on this live stream so far, so we didn't lose any viewers. Maybe there'll be some nasty comments, but we can live with that. We all get them. We're used to it. We have thick skin. You have to have thick skin in this day and age. We are not sensitive little snowflakes. We are not that special. We're just ordinary folks. Speaking our mind, Karlyn Borysenko, one of my favorite human beings. Read Actively Unwoke. Read Actively Unwoke. Where can you get that book?
Yeah, you can get my book. It's called Actively Unwoke, The Ultimate Guide for Fighting Back Against the Woke Insanity in Your Life at activelyunwoke.com. You can also, of course, find it on Amazon, hardcover, Kindle, and audio version read by me. And you can also visit my Substack if you want up-to-the-minute, like original reporting on the most dystopian things you're going to see on the internet. I'm showing you what's really going on both the far left and the far right, quite frankly, because I think that both sides are the same. You can visit me at karlyn.substack.com. Again, that's karlyn.substack.com. And I am trying to fund, there's another socialist conference that I want to go to in a couple of months, and I am trying to fund for that. And it's a 4-day socialist conference, and I want to show you guys what's really going on. If you thought this reproductive justice one was insane, ain't nothing on the one I want to go to. So if you want to help me out and send me to that would be great too.
How do we do that?
You can sign up on my Substack for paying subscriptions, $5 a month, $50 a year. And there are other ways you can support my work on the Substack that people can find out.
Cool.
Support her work. Mainstream media is dead. Citizen journalism is the wave of the future. Karlyn Borysenko, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. Have a good day.
You as well.